G'day, today we're doing a bit of work on a Ford Territory 2009 all-wheel drive. Got the ZF6HP transmission in it. Now he's got harsh engagement going from park to reverse and drive. We've got the flashing gear indicator light, meaning that we're in limp mode. What we've got to do is check all the basics first. Check your battery, make sure the terminal was actually loose on it. So battery scan there shows 100% charge, 100% health. So there's a few fault codes present, not battery related. And we've got quite a few codes there. Transmission control sensor, shift solenoid C. What else have we got? So you can see we're in limp mode. The P's flashing, all the gears are flashing. Very hard selection into gear. Now it's always a good idea to just check the driveline, make sure the couplings, the rubber couplings on the tail shaft are okay. The centre bearing, universal joints. Because it was so harsh thumping in, you want to check all the rubbers on the rear axle there, all these bushes, and anything else that might have gone out of whack. It all looks alright. So I've got the plug out, 10mm Allen key, and you can see there is a little bit of muck on the magnets, but it's not too bad. So this one might be worth putting a solenoid set in and possibly putting a zip kit or an end plug zip kit in the valve body. So you'll see on the valve body you've got these little end plugs on the valves, and if you just press them with your finger you'll notice some of them are quite loose. They're going in and out quite easily, and what happens, you end up losing pressure there. The pulsating or movement of the valve forcing pressure through there will wriggle the end plug and wear them out, and then you'll get pressure leaks there, and then pressure is not directed where it should be. The solenoids, you can see them at the back here, so we'll whiz them out. This one actually looks like it's got an older style mech plate. You can tell that because it's got the provision for a plug there. Now over here we have the range sensor, and you can see that has actually attracted a fair bit of fine metallic debris as well, so we'll clean that as well. And on top of the valve body where the mech plate or the lead frame is, you'll find a couple of speed sensors as well that will accumulate or attract that fine metallic debris like you saw on the magnet. So I'll whiz this out. The way we do that, we just undo this plug, pop out this little fork that's holding that sleeve in, and then we just take the larger Torx bolts out and the whole valve body will come down. And there are also little what are called tube seals and a bridge seal that connect the valve body to the case or the clutch applied ports. So we pull the little fork back down like that. There's a little tang that you press. If it doesn't come out easily, what you can do is just push that sleeve in a little bit, put tension on it, and that should come out easily. Don't force it. If you break it, they're very easy to break, plastic. You'll have a lot of trouble pulling the whole thing out. Now a little bit of spray there makes the sleeve slide out a little bit easier, or you can squirt a bit of oil in there. Got all the T30 bolts out. and you can see the tube seals are flat and flat. They should be sticking out a little bit. You can see that. They're just flat with the case. So you're going to get cross leaks there. And over here we've got the bridge seal. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you can air pressure test the clutch apply ports here through these ports here and over here. So we've got Torx Plus 25, and we're just going to take the mech plate off. I do have some other videos that show all this, so you can check them out as well. And now, you don't want to damage these surfaces here, because that's where those seals sit. And there's a guide pin here and one over here. And the pins are also being held by the solenoids. So you want to just gently and evenly remove it, as well as the whole valve body has to be nice and cool, because it's plastic. If it's still hot and you're going to reuse it, it can distort, which you don't want. It's on very firm. And that one was very tight. Now, as I showed earlier, there's the range sensor. You can see that's covered in that metallic debris, which is from normal wear and tear, like grease, so fine. So we'll clean all that up as well. Now these, you can just slightly bend these just so they're holding the solenoid in, because what happens if they're not holding the solenoid in firmly, the solenoid can pulse in and out and the end of it can actually break. So the order of the solenoids is very critical, so it's a good idea to mark them. I always like to record it from where the selector is, where that is. So I actually call that number 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. So these just wriggle out. Okay, solenoids all out. Good idea to loosen them before you do it with your tech gun, or you'll damage the little tech's head. It's always good practice when you're removing or splitting a valve body like this, is to remove the top half with the separator plate. Otherwise, if you just remove it, sometimes there's little check balls and springs and valves and they just fall out. And there we go, we can see all the check balls and the little valves pointing up, the little rubber balls. You want to make a note, take a photo or a note of where the positions are. Over here we've got a filter, and there's also a little filter here. Little filter. Another little filter. Little rubber check balls. Now over here we've got the little accumulator pistons or valves. I just want to remove them as well. And they also have like a little rubber seal on the end of them. If they're too hammered out, good idea to replace them. Now I'll just show you. You can see they're all flattened out. So all these ones need replacing. This is how they should look. You can see it's got like a half round rubber on it, if you can see that. So all those little accumulator pistons need to be replaced. And we're installing one of those Sonax zip kits. You can see that they do the ZF6HP26 and the 6R60 and some of the 6R80 valve bodies. And here we are on the Sonax website, and you can see we've got a Gen 1 and a Gen 2 valve body, how to identify it. All the instructions come in the kit anyway. You can scroll through that, and all this information is free on their website, Sonax, SONNAX.com. And you've got also the spots if you're going to vacuum test for wear in the valve body housing there. You can see where the critical wear points are. So it's got a lot of information on that site. Shows you where all the valves go, where all the end plugs are, the upgraded valves. But you usually get that in the zip kit anyway. I'll really show you how to do the top half valves. So they've got valves right through the whole thing. I've got to get this one out for the customer. We've given the valve body a bit of a clean and a wash. There'll still be oil under the valves there, but as we pull them out we'll just confirm that they're shuttling nicely and they're not dirty. So we'll start with this one here, and you can see that that end plug valve is very loose in there. Pull a little spring clip out, and now sometimes you'll find that these plugs they are loose but they won't come out easily, and the reason why that happens is they actually wear a little step there in the bore. So you've got to be patient, you've got to just let it find its own way or hammer out that little burr where it's been shuttling and get it out. Sometimes you might need to encourage it with a bit of air or pliers. It doesn't really matter if you damage that little end of that pin because it's not doing anything, but you want to try and not damage anything anyway. There we go. Didn't take much. But what happens, that little sleeve wears out and then you lose pressure there as well. The valve, spring goes next, and then the valve. Just squirted a bit of solvent. Valve, you want to make sure that the valve is shuttling nice and freely. Now at this point, you can see that that goes all the way down under its own weight. So the nice clean valve goes in, spring, and then we get the replacement end plug. And that's what it looks like. That's a little improvement plug. What they do is they supply a little O-ring that sits in there. Now we get a bit of oil, put it on that O-ring so it goes in easily. And now comes the critical bit. Now what I have this little tool here with a little hole in there, and the hole's actually slightly bigger than that little pin there. The reason I do that is I tap it in, and as I'm tapping it in, I sort of roll it around like this while I've got tension on it. You'd want to try and install these without ripping the little O-ring there, otherwise it defeats the purpose. The whole idea is to seal that plug so you don't lose pressure in that valve bore. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Like that. A little bit of oil on there. And then basically I just tap around like that. And I've got tension pushing down with these two fingers, and the whole idea is for the O-ring to find its own way through. There we go. If you just force it in, you'll cut that little O-ring on the end of that bore. While I've got that in there, I've got the little spring clip. Push it in there, job's done. There we go. That one's in. Next one. Little spring clip. Now this one, the spring's a lot stronger, you can feel it. And you want to always support it, otherwise it'll fly out and you'll lose everything. On this one, the spring's on the outside and the valves dropped out like that. Give that bore a bit of a wash. I'll just give it a squirt with that solvent in a bottle. And you want to just drop it in there, and it should just fall all the way in under its own weight. Now we're not vacuum testing. If you were doing that, you'd position the valve as per the instructions on the Sonax site and put your little vacuum tester there and measure if it's leaking or not, and that will tell you where it's worn and whether you need to replace the whole valve body. So we've got the valve in, spring goes in, and now we do exactly like we did before. End plug with the O-ring. And I'm just going to be rotating it around like that as I'm keeping tension on it. There we go, it's found its own way through. There we go. Little spring clips handy. There we go, two of them. We've done that one and that one. This one to go. Now you'll notice in the kit they have smaller end plugs and larger ones. So we've done the two smaller ones, there's a larger one here. Spring clip. This one's stuck a little bit. Now this one's probably not too bad. The other two were quite loose in there. This one's quite solid, so it's up to you whether you want to replace it. We're going to replace it. You can even see it's got wear marks, those darker spots there. They're little wear spots. So you can see it has been moving, but it's in there pretty tight still. Now this one, the valve is on the outside and there's no spring on that one. There we go. Give that a bit of a wash with the solvent. Valve a bit of a wash. And we just test it, make sure it's just going all the way to the end under its own weight. That's fine. Alright. And we need a larger end plug with the O-ring. And again, we don't force it straight in because you'll cut that O-ring. Spring clip, push that in, and there we go, this half has been done, all done. So that one can be reassembled. I'm going to go through and do the other half as well, in the same way. Now just bear in mind, on some zip kits on other vehicles, the end plug might be through a few channels here, or they'll have a valve on the inside and then there'll be a plug and then there'll be another valve. So you actually have to do that through a few of those channels. The trick is to not cut the seal on any one of them. So you've got to be very patient, just working its way through all those little sharp edge channels there. So you have to just be patient, that's basically it, and be gentle. It should just find its own way through there. There we go, we've gone through, cleaned it all up, replaced all the plugs, end plugs, you can see. Now these ones that are inside where the solenoids go, you'll need a little threaded bolt. I think they're 532 or something like that. But you need it, it just threads into those plugs, just so you thread it in, and then when you're tapping it in, same as the other way, you don't want to rip the little O-ring. The original ones that come out are like a plastic one. Now we've bolted the valve body together. We've used the Mechatronic plate without the solenoids fitted, because there are two guide pins that go here, and you want to put it on just briefly, just till you bolt it up so everything's aligned properly, and now we can tension it up. And in the instructions you'll see the torque specs for it, 8 Newton meter or 71 inch-pound on the valve body. Now I like to work on this mesh for the simple reason when you've got something odd shaped like a valve body or a pump, you can drop a couple of screwdrivers in there and it'll just hold it all in place while you torque it up. 8 Newton meter. It's a good idea to do it up evenly. I like to start from the middle and work around in a circle. So starting from the selector side, there's nothing in the first one, so we've got yellow, we've got the black one, blue, another blue, yellow, blue, and yellow. And same as before, you've got to sort of push it in, let the seal find its own way in. You don't want to cut that seal either. There is a big chamfer on those channels, but still want to be careful. Alright, we line all those up. And like I mentioned earlier, I've just bent these a little bit forward just so there's more tension pushing the solenoid in. And we're going to put all the bolts in, but we're not going to tighten it up until we put the mech plate back on, and then we'll give the solenoid a little bit of a wriggle so it finds its own spot where it sits properly. Now we've got the mech plate, or the lead frame as some people call it, nice and clean. Particular attention to where these input and output speed sensors are, here and here. And sometimes, I'll show you, you'll find all these sort of things coming off. What they do, they put this little protective strip along here to try and stop all that muck going in to the terminals. But what happens over a period of time, that just deteriorates and perishes. Nothing to worry about. Okay, we've got this to wash. I'll just give that a bit of a wash. Cleaned it in the solvent nicely, blown it all out. Sometimes you need to just flex that pin a little bit just to be able to slide it in a bit easier. There we go. When you're fitting this back together, make sure you align the selector valve over here, this one. All the terminals all ready to put back on. Got the 2 pins in, one pin here, one there, and they align in with that hole there and up here. Alright. Like I said before, we would have had the mech plate on without the solenoids on there, just so those pins align everything, so we can put it all back together easily. There we go. Now it'll get to a certain point, and now you've got to actually squeeze over this end here where the solenoids are to get it to go all the way down. There we go. I'm squeezing here to top and bottom. Flip that over now. Make sure that that selector's lined up here. Like I mentioned earlier, we haven't done these bolts up yet. Just so now we can probably should bolt it down first. And then we can give the solenoid a bit of a wriggle until it finds its natural position where it sits. And then we can tighten up that plate. Same as the other one, 8 Newton meter. And there probably is a torque setting for these, but it's not as critical because it's only holding that plate. It's not tightening up around any valve bores which can affect the operation of the valve. Double check your work as you go along, make sure you haven't missed anything, recheck everything, and that is ready to put back on. We need to replace those little tube seals and the bridge seals. New tube seals, and you can see that they actually stick out probably about 2 or 3 mil. So there's actually rubber tension sealing between the valve body and those little apply ports there. Now on the ZF ones, we don't have a thermal valve for the cooling line. They don't have one. Tube seals are in. Again, bridge seal, and we need to line the selector up as well. Hang on. There we go, just there, if you can see that. Line it up. Couple of bolts. And before you tighten it up, it's a good idea to put all the bolts in before you do any tightening. And that's basically it. All the bolts in, tension them up, make sure your selector's still lined up here, in there. Up to 10 Newton meter. A little bit of oil on the mech plug, or the case connector sleeve, whatever you prefer to call it. And you don't want to force it in, you want to just get it to find its own way in, and then keeping tension on it. This fork should just slide up easily. And there we go. That should just click in a little bit. There you go. Try and pull it out, and that's located. But like I said, sometimes the tension of the rubber on that sleeve will be trying to push it out, so you've got to keep a tension on it until you slide that fork up. It should all just go in nice and easily. Bit of dielectric grease on the plug, electrical connections there. And as you're keeping tension on it, it'll pull itself in on that thread until you hear that click. New pan. Now you can get an aftermarket steel pan where in the future all you need to do is replace the filter. On the plastic pans, the filter's incorporated with the pan as well. So a little bit of oil on there, just make sure there's nothing falling inside. Magnets are all nice and clean and secure. And you just wriggle it up. You've got to be pushing there where the location of the filter is. And as with everything, you put all the bolts in just up to it before you start tightening it. Got the pan on, and now we can take the filler level plug out, and that one's got a 8mm Allen key. Now we're going to put in, because we've only got this much oil in there to fill, but a lot more came out because we had the valve body off, we'll put in enough oil until it's just coming out of there. Start the vehicle for a moment. When I say a moment, probably 5 seconds. Turn it off, fill it up again till it's coming out. Do that 3 times, and then you can keep the motor running and just top it up till it's just coming out of there. And then we'll warm the transmission up to between 30 and 50 degrees. Ideally probably mid-range, 40 degrees with your scan tool, or if you've got a laser thermometer, you can measure the temperature like that. Good idea to take a couple of readings and take the average of the two. There we go, we've got 3 litres in. Start it up, 5 seconds, turn it off. Turn it off. And now we put another, whatever goes into it, till it just starts coming out. Start it up again for 5 seconds, and then do the same until we get it nearly full. So we got another 2 litres in. Start it up, 5 seconds. And again, we put it in until it's just coming out, and then you can start the vehicle up and leave it running. There we go, another 2 litres. Start it up, you can keep it running, go through the gears. Put a little bit more in. So now we're just waiting for it to get up to temperature. I could probably put the plug back in, and then when it gets to 40 degrees, or your preference, whether you want to measure it at 30 degrees. At 30 degrees, the transmission will operate at the higher hot level mark. If you do it at 50 degrees, it'll operate at the lower operating hot level mark. We like to get the mid-range, so 40 degrees. So we've got 33 degrees at the back. Can't see it. 27 at the front. What do you got on the scan tool? 38 degrees. So you can see scan tool just showing a little bit more, but it depends where the sensor is. I can't remember where it is. I think it's up here somewhere. And also this is plastic. More accurate if you're measuring the temperature on metal with these digital ones. And what temperature we got? 41. So we're a little bit over full, but we expected that because it was coming out at that lower temperature. We just want to have a little thin stream coming out. You can see the fluid colours improved a lot as well. And that's probably okay there. Rightio, you can turn it off. And while I'm lowering it down, we're clearing the fault codes. Just can't remember if we did it before. And you can see already the P's not flashing. So whatever the electrical issue was, we fixed it with that solenoid set. We'll take for a run, see how it's shifting. There we go. It's re-learnt nicely, shifting quite smoothly. No fault codes. We've done about 20 odd kilometres. And sometimes you don't have to replace the whole valve body. You can do the zip kit and solenoid sets in issues like this. Anyway, I hope that helps. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave any questions or comments in the section below. And throw us a beer if any of this information helps. Much appreciated. Keeps us motivated to make more videos. Thank you for watching.